For decades, Toyota and Honda redefined the American road with reliable, fuel-efficient cars. But behind the scenes, a powerful force began to steer these giants in a new direction: tariffs. These government-imposed taxes on imports were designed to protect U.S. industries, but they forced Toyota and Honda to rethink their entire strategy. Instead of simply exporting cars, they faced a choice: absorb the costs and risk losing the market, or build cars in America. The result? A dramatic transformation from importers to American manufacturers. This wasn't just about economics, it was about survival and adaptation in a changing world. Decisions made in Washington rippled across boardrooms in Tokyo and factory floors in Kentucky and Ohio. The tariffs became a catalyst, accelerating a shift that would have taken decades. Toyota and Honda had to build factories, train workers, and adapt their systems to a new environment. Their success or failure would reshape the American auto industry and serve as a case study in the real impact of trade policy. We'll explore how these tariffs worked, why they were imposed, and how they forced two Japanese giants to become part of the American industrial landscape. This is the story of how a trade barrier led to an unexpected advance into the heart of the U.S. economy. The late 1970s and early 1980s brought crisis to the American auto industry. The Big Three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, were caught off guard by soaring gas prices and a sudden demand for smaller, fuel-efficient cars. Japanese automakers, led by Toyota and Honda, filled the gap with compact, reliable vehicles like the Corolla and Civic. Their market share soared from under 4% in 1970 to over 20% by 1980, shaking Detroit to its core. U.S. factories closed, hundreds of thousands lost jobs, and the Midwest plunged into recession. The United Auto Workers Union saw its influence wane. Public anger grew, with politicians under pressure to act. Demonstrations erupted, sometimes targeting imported cars. The call for protectionist policies grew louder, fueled by fears of unfair competition and national pride. The government faced a stark choice: intervene or watch the industry collapse. This volatile environment set the stage for trade barriers that would force Toyota and Honda to rethink their business in America. The stakes were high, not just for companies but for the future of American manufacturing. The next move would change the industry forever. To save the U.S. auto industry, the government first turned to managed trade, not outright tariffs. In 1981, Japan agreed to voluntary export restraints, capping car exports to the U.S. at 1.68 million per year. This quota, though not a tax, drove up prices and made American cars more competitive. Intended as a temporary fix, the quotas lasted over a decade, signaling to Japanese automakers that the U.S. market was no longer open for unlimited exports. Political risk became a key business concern. Later, tariffs targeted specific vehicles like the 25% chicken tax on imported trucks and minivans, further raising the stakes. These escalating restrictions made it clear, relying on exports was risky and expensive. The cost of doing business now included quotas and tariffs that could erase profits overnight. For Toyota and Honda, the message was unmistakable: adapt or lose access to the world's biggest auto market. The only way forward was to build cars in America. The era of easy exports was over. A new strategy was needed for survival. Toyota responded to trade pressures with a bold pivot, becoming an American manufacturer. The quotas pushed Toyota to export only its most profitable models, but that wasn't enough for long-term growth. The solution: build cars inside the U.S. Toyota's first step was a joint venture with GM, Nummi, in California, a testbed for blending Japanese production with American labor. Success there led to Toyota's own plant in Georgetown, Kentucky in 1988, a massive investment and a clear commitment to the U.S. market. Producing the Camry in Kentucky meant no more import quotas or tariff threats. Toyota expanded rapidly, building plants in Indiana, Texas, and Mississippi, and encouraging Japanese suppliers to follow. This wasn't just about avoiding tariffs, it was about embedding Toyota in the American economy. Thousands of U.S. jobs were created, and Toyota's identity shifted from foreign exporter to local manufacturer. The transformation was driven by necessity, but it became a model for global adaptation. Trade policy forced Toyota's hand, but it also opened new opportunities. The company's future, and the future of American manufacturing, would never be the same. The shift from shipper to builder was complete. Toyota was now as much an American company as a Japanese one. Honda saw the writing on the wall, even before formal trade barriers hit. Guided by a philosophy of building close to the customer, Honda started manufacturing in America ahead of the curve. In 1979, Honda opened a motorcycle plant in Marysville, Ohio, a small step that paved the way for bigger ambitions. By 1982, Honda was assembling Accords in Ohio, becoming the first Japanese automaker to build cars in the US. Honda didn't stop at assembly. It built an engine plant nearby, aiming for self-reliance and local integration. This deep investment insulated Honda from trade disputes and currency swings, and increased the American content of its cars. Honda's expansion continued with more plants and R&D centers, designing vehicles specifically for US consumers. The quotas and tariffs accelerated a strategy Honda was already pursuing. The result: millions of cars built in America, thousands of jobs, and a new definition of what it meant to be a foreign automaker. Honda's early move set the pace for the industry. The company became a true American manufacturer by choice, and by necessity. Building cars in America meant more than just assembly lines for Toyota and Honda. It transformed entire regions. To support just-in-time production, Japanese suppliers followed, investing in US factories near their clients. Small towns in the Midwest and South became new automotive hubs, with states offering incentives to attract investment. These plants created thousands of well-paying jobs, revitalizing communities hit hard by industrial decline. Local businesses thrived, tax bases grew, and public services improved. But the shift also brought challenges. American suppliers faced new competition and higher standards. The new factories were mostly non-union, creating a dual labor system in the US auto industry. This changed the landscape for workers and companies alike. The ripple effects of Toyota and Honda's investments are still felt today. The auto corridor they helped build reshaped the American economy. The numbers tell the story of Toyota and Honda's transformation. In 1980, foreign-branded cars built in America were rare. By the mid-1990s, Japanese automakers were producing millions of vehicles annually in the US. Today, most Toyotas and Hondas sold in America are built here. The investment was massive. Toyota's Kentucky plant alone has seen over $10 billion in spending. Together, Toyota and Honda have invested tens of billions in US manufacturing and R&D. They directly employ over 100,000 Americans, with hundreds of thousands more jobs created through suppliers and related industries. The tariffs, meant to save Big Three jobs, instead built a new employment base. The quotas also pushed Toyota and Honda to launch luxury brands, Lexus and Acura, maximizing profit per import slot. Trade policy didn't just change where cars were made, it changed what kinds of cars were sold. The shift up market was a direct response to the new rules. The data is clear: tariffs and quotas reshaped the industry from the ground up. The impact is still visible on American roads today. The rise of Toyota and Honda as US manufacturers blurred the line between foreign and domestic cars. Was a Honda built in Ohio less American than a Ford made in Mexico? The Japanese automakers became major US employers and investors, changing the political and economic landscape. The Big Three now faced competition not just from imports, but from high-tech factories in their own backyard. Non-union transplant plants often had cost advantages, pushing Detroit to modernize and improve. The new transplant alley in the South and Midwest shifted political alliances, with lawmakers defending the jobs and investment brought by Toyota and Honda. Trade policy debates became more complex as foreign companies became key players in the US economy. Ironically, tariffs meant to protect the industry made it more competitive and global. The infusion of Japanese capital and technology raised standards for everyone. The American auto industry became more resilient, diverse, and innovative. The strategic retreat from imports led to a new era of competition and growth. The story of Toyota and Honda in America is a lesson in unintended consequences. Tariffs meant to shield US automakers instead spurred Japanese companies to invest billions and create hundreds of thousands of American jobs. The lines between foreign and domestic blurred and competition intensified. A protectionist policy led to a more modern, globalized industry. The very companies targeted by tariffs became pillars of the US economy. This history raises a crucial question: can such outcomes be repeated, or were they unique to the 1980s auto industry? As new debates over tariffs emerge, policymakers must consider that trade barriers may not protect domestic firms, they may simply change the rules of the game. The battlefield may move, but competition will always find a way. The legacy of Toyota and Honda's adaptation endures. The future of American manufacturing may depend on how we answer that question.